Hi everyone, my name is King IV and this is an idea workshop. And in today's workshop, we're going to do payroll schemes, detecting these different payroll schemes. So we have different procedures here. It's identify ghost employees, identify same bank account number used by multiple employees, identify payroll deposits to bank accounts not on employee information spreadsheet, and then recalculate hourly and salary payroll and compare it to payroll deposit records. So here I have employee information on hourly and salary employees, payroll deposit data, and as well timesheet data. So we're going to do the ghost employees. But first thing I need to do is I'm going to combine these two data sets, hourly and salary employees. In this case, what I need to do first is to make sure that I'm going to just take the data that I want. In this case, I just want employee ID and as well the SIN number. And I'm going to call this employee information. I'll call this part 1. Perfect. And then I'm going to do the same thing here on the salary employee. And now what I want to do is combine these two different data sets. I'm going to make sure that the same type. Looks like I have to convert this to a character. I'll change the length to 12. And then I'm going to append the salary information below here. Oh, I should have. I'm going to rename this database. I'm going to call this employee information. Okay. Perfect. So now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to determine whether or not these social insurance numbers are correct. Okay. So great. So first thing I need to do is I need to check if the length is correct for these. Just scanning through the data, looks like so let's check the length. So here I'm going to do a field. I'm going to call it SIN length. And I'm going to go length, all trim of this SIN number. We'll take a look here to see whether or not all the links look correct, and it looks good to me. Oh, sorry, that's actually the wrong table. I need to go to this table, and you'll see here that some of these fields are a little messed up, so I'm going to clean this up actually before we proceed. I'm going to put the length at 12. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to trim, and then as well I'm going to remove the extra spaces. So I'm going to remove the spaces and I'm going to trim it. So this is what it looks like. Press OK, OK, and now I'm going to check the length. So it looked like the length was okay on the hourly employees, but doesn't look like it was okay on the salary one. So here I'm going to go all trim, SIN clean, make sure everything makes sense here. In this case, it does. Perfect. So the next thing you want to do is I want to validate the social insurance number. And the way we do it is essentially this method here, where we basically take the 9 numbers, every even number, number, in this case 2, 4, 6, 8, are multiplied by 2, and then every odd number is multiplied by 1. You add them up. If the number is more than 2 digits, especially when you multiply by 2, then you add the digits together, or simply just minus 9. And then if the numbers are perfectly divisible by 10, then they are fine. So let's go ahead and try this out. So I like to just break this out into 2 couple of different parts. So the first part is I'm going to do all the odd numbers. So I'm going to call it odd total. This one's pretty easy. So in this case, we're going to use the mid function, and we're going to take sin clean, and I'm going to look at the first character, first digit, and then I can convert this to a value. I'm going to shrink this down a bit, and then I simply just copy and paste and change this, do this 5 times. So I do this for the third, as well as the 5th, the 7th, and as well as the 9th. Perfect. So if we take a look at this, so 8 plus 2, that's 10, plus 5, that's 15, plus 2, that's 17, plus 3, that's 20. Okay, good. Next thing we need to do is we need to look at all the even numbers. I actually like to break this out into all the different components. You can do this in another way if you want, but I find the code just gets too long. It's much too complicated. So here we're gonna do an if statement. So if we're gonna say if the sin clean, if the value here is greater than 4, then what I want to do here is take this number, multiply by 2, and then I'll minus 9, right? Because if it's 5, for example, when I multiply by 2, it's going to be 10. I need to add the 1 and 0 together. That's going to be 1. That's the same thing as taking 10 minus 9. Otherwise, just leave it like this. So again, you could do this all at once or separately, but I like to do it separately. I just find it's a little bit easier to follow, not as complicated, hopefully lower likelihood of making a mistake. So I'm just gonna keep penning this. But again, you can do it all at once, or if you have a more clever way of doing this, and you can do that as well. And then we're going to do one more versions of these. And then we're going to call this even total. And we are going to take 2 plus 4 plus 6, 6 plus 8. And then we're going to call the next field sin total. And I personally like doing these all separate, but again, you can choose not to do them so separate. I probably could have added the even numbers and odd numbers to come with sin total. Perfect. Let's just see what that looks like. So let's do a couple checks here. So the 2, so when I do 9 times 2, that's 18. Add those together, that's 9. When I do 8 times 2, that's 16. And then I minus 9, that's 7. When I go 1 times 2, that's 2. And then when I go 5 times 2, that's 10. I add those numbers together, that's 1. Perfect. So now I have the sin total. And the last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to do the sin check. And I'm going to do an if statement. Actually, before I do that, I should change it to a virtual character. I'm going to put this as 5. I'm going to say if sin total, and I'm going to use this function called modulus, is equal to 0, which means it's perfectly divisible. I'm going to call that valid. And then otherwise I'm going to call it not valid. Actually, to change the length of this field, let's change this to 10 because not valid is more than 5. And now here you go. Now you can see which ones are valid and which ones are not. Then you can follow up on those invalid ones. Now we're going to take a look at whether or not there's multiple bank account numbers used by, or the same bank account number used by multiple employees. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a direct extract similar to what I've done before. I'm going to take a look at employee number and as well bank account number, and I'll call this bank part 1. And then I'm going to go here, do a direct extract. Again, just I need employee ID and then bank account number. I'm going to call this bank part 2. And then I'm going to append these tables. I might need to change the field type, just depending on whether or not they're the same. And then I'll call this bank information. Okay, perfect. Now, similar, we're going to call this bank summary, and then we're going to do this by bank account number. And then I'm going to do a direct extract. I'm going to call it multiple bank accounts. And I'm going to do it where number of records is greater than 1. Perfect. So it looks like this one employee has, or this one bank account number is used by 3 different employees. Okay, interesting. That's good to know. Okay. So the next one is identify payroll deposits to bank accounts not on the employee information spreadsheet. Okay, perfect. So we already have this bank information spreadsheet here, and we have the payroll data. So, but before we move on, we need to see whether or not we need to normalize any of this payroll data. It looks like it's pretty good. Let's take a look here. Okay, that looks pretty good. So let's take a look. So I'm going to take this data, this payroll data, and I'm going to line it up with this bank account information. And then I'm going to do, I want to do all records with no secondary match. So are there bank account numbers used in the payroll deposit data, not on the bank information spreadsheet? And I'm going to be lining it up based off of bank account number. Perfect. So I'm going to go payroll. No bank, no employee. Okay, perfect. So it looks like all the bank account numbers appear on the bank accounts. That's good. Good to know. Now we're going to recalculate payroll. First, they're going to be divided into 2 type of groups. One is hourly employees, one is salary. And let's start with this hourly employees, and that's going to be really driven by this timesheet data. So first thing we need to do is get the bank account number and as well the hourly rate from this spreadsheet or from this table. So let's go ahead and select that table, and then all we need is the bank account number and as well the hourly rate. And then we're going to call this timesheet with rates and account, and we'll do that. Oh yeah, I gotta put the matching key on. Perfect. So I also have some of these like blank rows, but it's not that big a deal. So first thing I need to do is calculate the recalculate gross pay. So pay is basically hourly rate times regular hours, and then overtime times 2 times the regular hours. So let's go ahead and calculate that. Payroll recalc. And we are going to go take the rate times regular hours plus overtime times 2. And that's given in the assumptions. So now here we have the recalculated rates, add the bank account numbers. Next thing I want to do here is I have this payroll deposit data, and you'll see here it's by bank account number and then by date, and then I have to join it with this timesheet rates and accounts data. So it should be handy. But because I know that there's multiple bank accounts used, I do have some slight hesitation just doing the straight join. So I am going to do a summarization just to make sure that we're not missing anything. We're going to summarize by pay date and by bank account number, and then I'm gonna add up the hourly overtime and as well the payroll recalculated, and I'm gonna call this timesheet with rates and accounts summarized. So I'm gonna call it summary. Perfect. Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the same thing on this payroll deposit data, just in case there are some fields that are duplicated. So here I'm gonna deposit date, the bank account, and deposit amount. I'm gonna call this payroll summarized. Perfect. So next thing I want to do here is I'm going to do a join between these two tables. So I'm going to select the table I just summarized. I'm going to do I'm going to do all records in the primary. So I'm going to call this timesheet versus payroll versus deposit. And I'm going to be doing it on two different fields. So we're going to do a pay date, deposit date, bank account number. Perfect. And then in this case, I just need the payroll deposit amount. Perfect. Now what we can do here is we can do a direct extraction. Let's actually create a calculate field first. Let's call it variance. We'll put 2 decimal places, and we're basically going to take payroll recalculate sum minus deposit amount sum. And we take a look here. It looks like it's pretty good for the most part. And I'm going to do here, I'm going to call it time. Let's call it hourly payroll exceptions. And what we're going to do here is we're going to take variance is not equal to 0. So here you go. Now we can see the employees that do have a difference between the payroll recalculation and the deposit amounts. Okay, that's good. That's pretty straightforward. Nothing too complicated there. The next one is salary employees. So what we have to do here is we do have to calculate what their salary amount should be, and then we'll compare it to what their payroll deposit data is each week. Okay, perfect. So what I'm gonna do, what I'll do first is I'm going to do matches. Okay, and I'm just going to identify all the deposit dates and bank account number not used, so that way I'll just have the payroll salary. I'll call it non-hourly. Perfect. So this should be the delta that should line up with the hourly employees. Okay, perfect. Actually, what I could do is I'm just gonna do a straight join with the salary data. Actually, before I do that, I'm gonna recalculate just because there are some where there's multiple bank account numbers. Okay, so here I'm gonna calculate the salary bi-weekly. And we simply just take the salary number, divide by 26. So that should give us what they should be paid on a bi-weekly basis. So you'll see that there. So before I do that, I'm actually by bank account number. And I'm going to summarize this here. And I'm going to call this salary summarized. Perfect. Next thing I want to do here is now I'm going to join with this data. And then in this case, I just want the salary biweekly. And I'm going to call this payroll salary recalculated. Oh, I forgot to include the match. This case is going to be by bank account number. There you go. So now we can calculate the variance again between these two. So we can go deposit amount minus salary biweekly. And then we can do an extraction. We can call this salary payroll exceptions. And that's where variance does not equal 0. And there you go. So now we can see that these 3 employees had exceptions of these amounts. Pretty interesting. Take a look at these 2 exceptions, identify them, and for those in my class, then I want you to create a visualization noting these exceptions. Okay, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave it in the comment section below, and I look forward to speaking to you next time. Thank you.